All right, so let's dive right into this kind of geopolitical hot potato. You've sent me some articles about former President Trump and his pronouncements on the Panama Canal, and we're going to break down exactly what he said, the reactions it provoked, and why this seemingly settled issue is suddenly back in the spotlight. So the Panama Canal, this 50-mile stretch connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, is a linchpin of global trade. Ever since it opened in 1914, it's been a vital artery for shipping, shaving thousands of miles off journeys that would otherwise have to go around the tip of South America. And for a significant chunk of its history, the canal was under U.S. administration. That all changed, however, on December 31st, 1999, when control was officially transferred to Panama. As per the Torrijos-Carter treaties, signed back in 1977, this was a monumental moment for Panama, a true assertion of their sovereignty. The Panama Canal Authority, an autonomous government agency, took the helm, and it's been managing the canal and collecting those hefty tolls ever since. Fast forward to late 2024, and former President Trump throws a rhetorical grenade into this seemingly settled situation. He suggests quite boldly that the U.S. should reclaim control of the canal. His reasoning: he alleges that U.S. vessels are being overcharged and voices concern about growing Chinese influence in the region. And he doesn't mince words, let me tell you. He calls the fees a complete ripoff and expresses worry about the canal falling into the wrong hands. On side. Strong stuff, right? You can imagine this didn't exactly go down well in Panama. President Jose Raul Mulino immediately fired back, stating in no uncertain terms that the canal belongs to Panama, every inch of it, and will always remain under their control. He calls it their inalienable patrimony, a powerful term, emphasizing their absolute ownership. He flatly refuses any notion of renegotiating control, effectively shutting down Trump's suggestion. And the Panamanian people, they weren't having it either. Protests erupt, with people labeling Trump a public enemy and demanding respect for their hard-won sovereignty. They see this as a blatant disregard for their country and their right to manage their own affairs. It's a potent reminder of the strong national pride tied to the canal. Now let's be clear about something. Any attempt by the U.S. to reclaim the canal would be a clear violation of international law. And those existing treaties we talked about, the fallout on the world stage would be immense, potentially damaging relationships and causing serious diplomatic rifts. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite the widespread condemnation of Trump's stance, he finds an unlikely ally in Meghan McCain, Senator John McCain's daughter, and a frequent critic of the former president. She publicly states her support for his position on the canal, citing personal reasons. Her father, as you might know, was born in the Panama Canal zone during the time of U.S. control. It's a reminder that even in complex geopolitical issues like this, personal connections and family history can play a powerful role in shaping opinions. So you're probably curious about what exactly Trump is alleging when it comes to China and the Panama Canal. He suggested that China is somehow exerting undue influence over the canal's operations. However, Panama's President Mulino has directly refuted these claims, stating unequivocally that no Chinese soldiers or personnel are controlling any part of the waterway. It's important to acknowledge, though, that Panama does have significant economic ties with China. They've inked several trade agreements, and Chinese companies have invested in various projects in Panama, including port facilities. One notable example is the Panama Container Port, a massive shipping hub on the Atlantic entrance of the canal. This project, developed by a Chinese company, has significantly expanded Panama's cargo handling capacity. So while China's economic footprint in Panama is undoubtedly expanding, the notion that they're controlling the canal itself seems unfounded, at least based on the information we have. From both Panamanian and U.S. sources, this whole controversy has actually brought renewed attention to the significance of that 1999 handover. It wasn't just some simple ceremony. It was a culmination of years of negotiation and a testament to Panama's long struggle to reclaim its sovereignty. The Torrijos-Carter treaties, signed back in 1977, were really groundbreaking. They laid out a clear timetable for the gradual transfer of control and addressed a lot of complex issues. The neutrality of the canal, the U.S.'s right to defend it if threatened, and the financial arrangements for the transfer. It was a delicate balancing act aimed at satisfying both countries' interests. These treaties weren't without their critics, though, particularly in the U.S. Some argue that relinquishing control of the canal would weaken America's strategic position in the world. Others express concern about whether Panama, a relatively small nation at the time, would have the expertise and resources to effectively manage such a complex and vital waterway. However, history has shown that Panama has risen to the challenge admirably. The Panama Canal Authority has demonstrated its capability and efficiency, overseeing the canal's expansion and modernization, including the addition of a third set of locks in 2016, allowing for larger new Panamax ships to transit. They've also navigated various challenges,
from managing water resources during droughts to adapting to shifts in global trade patterns. And the canal itself, it remains a crucial artery for global commerce. In 2023 alone, over 14,000 ships carrying over 333 million tons of cargo passed through the canal. This traffic represents a huge chunk of international trade, transporting everything from oil and gas to manufactured goods and agricultural products. Now let's circle back to Trump's claims about U.S. vessels being overcharged. It's true that the Panama Canal Authority sets tolls for ships passing through, and these tolls can be substantial, sometimes reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars per transit. The specific amount is determined by a complex formula that takes into account various factors: the ship's size, type, and the amount of cargo it's carrying. One important point to note here is that these tolls apply equally to all ships, regardless of their country of origin, so U.S. vessels aren't being singled out or charged any differently than ships from China, Europe, or anywhere else. This is a key point that often gets lost in the political rhetoric surrounding the canal. Whether these tolls are considered exorbitant is subjective and a matter of perspective. The Panama Canal Authority naturally defends them as necessary to maintain and operate the canal, which is a massive and complex infrastructure project requiring constant upkeep and investment. They also point out that the tolls are competitive compared to alternative routes. For many ships, sailing around the tip of South America would add significant time and fuel costs, making the Panama Canal a much more cost-effective option, even with the tolls. So the debate about the fairness of the tolls is complex, and there's no easy answer. But what's clear is that Trump's pronouncements have reignited this debate and brought the Panama Canal back into the global spotlight. And this brings us to the larger geopolitical context. As China's global influence continues to grow, particularly in Latin America, the strategic importance of the Panama Canal only intensifies. The U.S. understandably keeps a close eye on China's activities in the region, particularly those related to infrastructure and trade. One specific point of concern for the U.S. is China's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure project that aims to connect Asia, Europe, and Africa through a network of ports, railways, and pipelines. Some analysts see this initiative as a direct challenge to U.S. economic and geopolitical dominance, particularly as it expands into Latin America, a region traditionally considered within the U.S. sphere of influence. The Panama Canal, with its crucial location and its importance to global trade, naturally becomes a point of interest in this larger power struggle between the U.S. and China, although Panama has repeatedly affirmed its commitment to the canal's neutrality and its open access to all nations. The concern remains that China's growing economic influence could eventually translate into some form of strategic leverage over this vital waterway. So what does all this mean for you? Well, it underscores just how interconnected our world really is, events happening thousands of miles away. Like a political debate about a canal in Central America can have ripple effects that impact your daily life in ways you might not even realize. The price of your morning coffee, the availability of certain goods on supermarket shelves, even fluctuations in gas prices, all of these can be affected by the smooth functioning of the Panama Canal and the global trade it facilitates. Any disruption to that flow, whether due to political disputes, economic sanctions, or even natural disasters, could have tangible consequences for consumers and businesses worldwide. This situation also highlights the critical importance of diplomacy and international cooperation. Resolving disputes peacefully, upholding existing treaties, and finding common ground are essential, especially when dealing with something as crucial as a global shipping lane. The stakes are high. And unilateral actions or aggressive rhetoric can easily backfire, leading to unintended consequences and escalating tensions. And here's something to ponder. As we wrap up our deep dive into this fascinating and complex issue, given the canal's undeniable strategic importance and the increasing competition between global powers, do you think this issue will resurface in the future? And if so, how might it play out differently? Could we see a more collaborative approach between the U.S. and China? Or will this become another flashpoint in their growing rivalry? It's a complex scenario with many moving parts, and predicting the future is always a risky endeavor. But one thing is certain: the Panama Canal, this 50-mile marvel of engineering, will continue to be a focal point for global attention, economic interest, and geopolitical maneuvering for many years to come.